We're live.
Good evening, everyone. This is DYCC Barbershop once again, coming to you live at our barbershop. We have a great guest lined up today. We're going to be talking about financial literacy. We want to be able to help people learn how to build wealth also. This is a two-part series that we're going to be doing tonight, today, and then our next part is going to be on August 5th. But first of all, let me welcome my compadres, my guys that are in the barbershop with me. Jerry, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here. I'm in the building, of course, in the barbershop seat. Always great to be here. Getting ready to have a fresh cut with a great conversation. And now I get to pass it to one of my brothers as well. I want to pass it over to our very own Mike.
Thanks, Jerry. Good evening. Good to see you. Scott, good to see you. Welcome, whoever is logging on to another exciting DYC Barbershops talk. Scott, I'm amped.
Oh, I'm really, really amped because I'm getting ready to get my bag right. See, I'm close to the age that I get the bag right so we can get out of here. So I understand how to get the bag right. So for our first guest that I want to introduce was a guy that really doesn't need to be introduced. A great guy. He's known around New York City. I just appreciate what he's doing. He has a very hard job. And I want to introduce my buddy and friend, Alan Farrell. Alan, come on, say something to the group. Alan?
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much, Scott, for that introduction, and Mike and Jerry, and for this opportunity. It's just great to be here with everybody. My name's Alan Farrell, Assistant Deputy Commissioner for Parent and Community Engagement in New York City's Human Resources Administration's Office of Child Support Services. That's a mouthful, but essentially I'm working to ensure that we are doing our best to lift children and families out of poverty. In a previous life, I was the Fatherhood Services Coordinator in the previous mayor's administration and worked closely with Mike and Scott and many other city agencies around the city to promote father friendliness. And I'm really excited about today's conversation.
Wow. Okay, thanks, Alan. And Mike, you just filled the barbershop up tonight, Mike. We got to bring in extra chairs. All your other friends that you brought in. So introduce your guest, Mike.
All right, well, we have a number of guests to introduce. I'm going to start off keying off of Alan and working for one of our sister agencies. We have another two representatives from another one of our sister agencies. We have colleagues from the city's Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. So Zanib Ahmad and Max Goldberger, why don't you introduce yourselves to everyone?
Thank you, Mike. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here and share our lovely resources. My name is Zanib Ahmad. I'm one of the Community Affairs Associates within the city agency formerly known as Department of Consumer Affairs. We recently went through a name change, so now we're known as officially Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. We have a plethora of resources at our disposal. The main one right now that we'll be talking about is our financial literacy programs related to free tax prep, to the recently child tax credit resource guide. So I'll pass along the mic to my colleague, Max.
Thank you, Zanib. Thank you, Mike. Thank you all for inviting me here. This is fantastic. My name is Max Goldberger. I'm a program officer with the Office of Financial Empowerment, part of the Department of Consumer Affairs, also a bit of a mouthful. I run the Financial Empowerment Center program, which provides free financial counseling for anybody who lives or works in New York City above the age of 18. We help people all day, every day with their finances. This is what I love to do. This is what I love to talk about. So I'm really happy to be here.
Welcome, Max. Welcome, Zanib. And I got more guests. So next, I want to introduce Dale Favors, Managing Partner for Adaptive Growth Leadership. Dale, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Mike. Glad to be here. Looks like we have a lot of work to do. And with Max and Zanib already doing what they do for the city and constituents of the city, we want to be here to help guide with the information that is necessary. Myself, as well as the other guests that we will get to know, we truly, truly believe that a better understanding of finance and an education around how money works and how money moves is probably one of the most important things for all of us, for any person looking to change the trajectory of their economic status. And so the more you understand and see how money can work you can make money work in order to make more money, we put ourselves in a better position. So thanks for having me. Mike, back to you.
Thank you. And Dale was not only willing to join today's conversation, but as I discussed with him what we've been doing over time with the Barbershop Talks, he became a recruiter and a co-organizer for this very session. And Dale may be modest to admit it, but not that long ago, he shared with me a series that he has done for WBGO on this very topic. And so I hope we've added this in the resources list. But if you sign on today after this session, make sure you also go and check out the series that Dale's been co-producing for WBGO. The more we know about how to manage our money, the more we can grow our money. And so Dale helped recruit some of the other panelists that we have today. And so next I want to welcome and thank you, Dale, for this introduction, Eric Richardson. Eric Richardson is the founder and CEO of Growth Development Associates. Eric, welcome to the Barbershop.
It is a pleasure to be here. I can't imagine being anywhere else. I've had good fortune of being the CEO and founder of a 32-year-old company. We teach sales and management training in over 40 countries. Our clients range from Microsoft, American Express to TransUnion and the like. I'm a keynote speaker and an author, but the thing I'm most proud of is we're the author of a series of courses on 8 topics on personal finance, the 8 decisions you have to make in order financially to exist or thrive in this country. And if we had learned that in high school, all of us would be financially self-sufficient by now. So in any way that we can help and add value to this conversation, count me in.
Thank you so much, Eric. And finally, Dale has also brokered this introduction to another fine colleague. This is, we always want to get the names right. If I mispronounce, please correct me.
Sekou.
Sekou. Well, I got the Sekou part. It's Kaylan.
Yes.
All right, I got it.
1,000.
Sekou Kaylan, who's the head of consumer banking for the Northeast Division for JP Morgan Chase and Company. So first of all, Sekou, welcome to the Barbershop. But I also want to thank you because as we were getting ready to go live, we understood that you're actually fielding other appointments and managing multiple engagements while you're live streaming with us. So thank you. And thank you, JP Morgan Chase, for making you available to join the Barbershop, and welcome.
Great. Well, one, I'm delighted to be here, but when you do see me exit out the blue, you'll know that's why. I've been passionate about the topic of financial health based on my childhood experience and obviously working in financial services. And I was fortunate to launch an effort called Advancing Black Pathways, where we focus in the economic or investing in the economic opportunities for the Black community. But anyway, I've carried that passion with me and I'm happy to be on this call to talk about, again, financial health, because many people think it's about what you make, and it's not about just what you make, it's about what you keep and grow. And so the financial health topics that we'll talk about here really will kind of support that view.
Great, Sekou. I really appreciate that. You know what? This is so important, especially to the work that Mike and I do, because we do a lot of work around anti-poverty. And this is going to be for anybody in the group, because of the importance of our work of helping pull people out of poverty and into a thriving, like Eric said, a thriving. Anybody on the panel, just give me, what are some of the first steps people need to do if they're really trying to help pull themselves out of poverty? What are like the two or three things that someone needs to start their way out of pulling themselves out of poverty? Because that's what we do, and that's work that we do. And I know I love working with anti-poverty. And when you see somebody who's on the path, gives me such a rush, but I'm not the expert. So anybody in the panel, can you help us?
Well, I tell you what, I'll get started, and definitely there's plenty of people who can tell you more about this. But I said earlier, and I think Mike talked about it as well, the podcast series he's talking about that I did was called The Great Wealth Divide. And if you understand historically what has happened to people of color in this country and our inability to participate early on in the economic system that existed in the country, we were forced to figure it out ourselves. And so when you go through that, there's information that is lost along the way. So I think the first part is understanding enough, having enough information to understand how the money moves through the system and how it works. And then you have to be disciplined enough to work within that system to go through the process of feeding yourself, saving for the future, and preparing for other things that may come your way. And some of that other things that may come your way is investment opportunities, educational opportunities. You have to do that. So as you're figuring out how to leave that cycle of poverty, because it is a cycle, many people have been caught up in it. You have to understand where to get the information, how to begin the disciplined process of saving, and then how to best make the decisions necessary with the money that you have saved to then grow that money. That's what I think it is.
Anybody else can jump in on this topic?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on that because the fundamental issue is a function of, and I think Sekou said it well, wealth is not what you make, it's what you keep. Two issues, two opportunities to drag yourself out of this recurring cycle of poverty. Number one is don't overspend your earnings. 62% of all Americans spend more than they earn. Doesn't matter how much you make. People that make $30,000 a year spend $40,000. People who make $400,000 spend $500,000. And it's because we don't see the consequential cost of a decision. I'll just give you one example. When you decide to buy a car and you say, can I afford this $300 or $400 a month payment? What you're not considering are the consequential costs. When you buy a car, you don't make one decision, you make 5 decisions. Because you have to have the car, got to pay gas, got to have maintenance. There's 5 decisions. And if you didn't think about that, you're already overspending your budget. Where do you live? 5 more decisions. Do you have children? 5 more decisions. And then without knowing it, within 30 days of getting our first job, we're spending more than we make. So that's the A side of the record. On the B side, people that are struggling to pay their bills will tell you that I can't do what Dale said. I can't invest. I don't have money to invest. And I've asked these same people, do you stop at Starbucks on the way to work every morning? And they say, yeah, I got to get that latte with the whipped cream and the umbrella syrup thing. Well, that's $4 a day. $4 a day times 22 working days a month is $88 a month on coffee. If instead you put that $4 a day into an average mutual fund, if you carried your own coffee between age 20 and age 50, that's $250,000. So I'm not telling you not to buy coffee. I'm just telling you how much it costs. So take a look at your spending decisions, pay attention to the consequential drag with that, and then find habits that you do on a daily basis and just switch one habit into investment. You will change your life.
All right, Max.
I'll agree. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Max.
Oh, I would first off, everything, Dale, Eric, everything you said was totally on point. It's great to hear it come from somebody that isn't just me, because I preach all that all day, every day. One thing that I think about a lot, and because we work with clients directly one-on-one, there's so much of an emotional side to money. And we don't talk about that at all as well. Money is stressful. Money is scary. Thinking about the long term can give you a heart attack regardless of what age you are. When it comes to starting to figure out financial security, pulling yourself out of poverty, it all comes down to building a plan. And you're right, it comes down to figuring out the $4 a day you can spend. It comes down to making sure that the decisions you're making are good long-term ones. But you as an individual or as a family or whoever you're with, you have to figure out how do you approach it emotionally and how do you make sure that you feel comfortable with what you're doing. The best budget in the world doesn't go anywhere if you're not constantly paying attention to it. And most people fall off that track because they're scared and they don't have anyone there to help them or support them. That's a huge first step. And I find that if you approach it emotionally first, you get comfortable with your money, you get comfortable with your situation, a lot of other things fall into place.
The only thing I'll add, there is, and again, you have resources. All these financial institutions have resources. Don't feel you have to do it on your own. There are budgeting tools. There's an auto save tool that we have. There's all free. Like you set it and forget it. You figure out how much you want to save, and then automatically it's saved at whatever period you identify. So that's the good thing, that there are tools that can walk you through, understanding what you're spending versus what's coming in. The other thing I will say that becomes important is this understanding of building an emergency fund. 40% of Americans don't have $500 in the event of an emergency. And so what often happens is some emergency happen, your car, you got to put in the shop. You weren't anticipating that. And it creates this cycle that snowballs because now I have to pull money from here or do that or do this and then it impacts my credit later because I haven't paid this or that. So you want to make sure as you look at your goals, again, all these resources are available through the city, through institutions, that then puts you in that rhythm and it'll take away the fear because again, you don't feel like you're having to be the master of every piece of detail or knowledge. Instead, you could use phenomenal technology that's actually out there.
That's really helpful. Two reactions. One, Sekou, as you were talking, I was thinking about something Scott said at the outset about how at DYCD, his program, several programs we sponsor, are always looking to work at alleviating conditions of poverty. And as you were speaking right now, I thought about an analogy that I heard, and I can't remember who to attribute it to, but people were talking about folks who are basically always catching hell, and I'm just going to say poor folks, just for convenience, say poor folks, and then folks that already have some resources. And the image was spider web and a pie. And if you cut a wedge out of a pie, you still have the rest of the pie. So like if your car breaks down, but you have a lot of other resources, you start arranging, ride shares or other things. Like you don't necessarily lose your job because your car breaks down, right? But if you're catching it from all angles and you pull one piece of the spider web out, other things start collapsing and falling apart. So I'm bringing that up right now, not to be depressing, but I'm bringing it up right now because I'm thinking about what Max said, and I want us to spend some time talking about the tools. But I want to go back to something Max said. We were talking about people. As soon as you start talking about money, they get scared. People are scared to talk about money, and people are scared to talk with each other about money and to talk to professionals or people who could otherwise help change their stance towards money and maybe their attitudes and then their behaviors, which is where I think we're trying to go in this conversation. So let's go back to Max, but I want to hear from other folks too. How do you first begin? I think that's what we're trying to do tonight too. How do you first begin having conversations about money and getting people to even admit that they're defined by money or lack of money or afraid of what it means, that they don't already have more money? They don't even want to get into a conversation with you about you strategizing about their money. How do you even begin
Well,
breaking that up?
yeah, I'd like to speak to that a little bit. I mean, something that Sekou talked about, not feeling like you have to do it on your own. And I think it aligns up with what you're talking about being afraid. I could say a little bit more about that, but I brought along a video. It's if that can be queued up now and played until the 201 section of the video, that would be great, because there's a gentleman who I think could tell us a little bit about that, and his story, I think, speaks volumes around asking for help and what to do when you're afraid. So if that could play now.
If not, I'll jump in while we wait.
Yeah, go ahead. There you
there
go.
we go. No,
Oh, there you
it
go.
is.
Just play that to the 201.
Yeah, I was curious to see how fast you could turn it around. That's pretty good so far, right? I was got quiet, like, oh, okay. Here we go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, turn your sound on.
You have to start it over.
We need audio. You may have to reselect and select audio when you go. So Sekou, why don't you make your point and then we'll recue the video.
Yeah, the only point I was going to make is, again, I think we have to approach it with no judgment or shame, and that becomes important. And one way, and well, Dale touched on this. Let's look at the reason. Historically, there are some reasons why minority communities have been impacted. Whether it's been government policy, financial policy, et cetera. And so I think one of the first steps is to just cast away the judgment and shame and recognize that the same way we connect with our crew. And I ask you, those are some nice kicks. Where did you get those kicks from? Shoes or whatever, shirt or whatever. We should have that same discussion. How did you get your mortgage? Right? How did you get your first credit card? So I think as we begin to shift the dialogue, like we used to say in our community, saying keeping it 100, meaning
That's
keeping it real. But we need to talk about keeping it 700 plus, meaning keeping your credit score above 700 plus, so that you can access the credit markets when you need it. Right. But again, I understand, recognize where you are, and that's fine. But it's about where you want to go. And the only way you're going to get to where you want to go is if you connect with others, if we share this discussion. Right. Because then you can move the stigmas. When I grew up, basically money was a taboo topic. If my parents were talking about money, you knew to exit the room, or unless you get exited with a backhand. You can't do that these days. But that's what would happen back in the day. We didn't talk about money. Whereas I have 3 children. My son will talk to you about cryptocurrency, the markets, everything. But the point is, we make it part of the dialogue, right? The appreciation of it, the discussion, and the tools. And so I think that's the first step. The biggest challenge is always taking the first step, right? That's with anything, though. That is with all things. So be willing to take that first step, find the resources, talk to people. And so that I'll shut up now, but just wanted to add those thoughts.
That was gold. So I know we were going to get to Alan's video, but when you just said that, we used to that phrase, keep it at 100. So we really got to adopt this, keeping it 700 plus. And one quick personal anecdote, right? I had to re-up the insurance on my house. And this is one of those situations where I started using the same people that my mother was using, right? But I didn't like something that the guy was saying. And I had to check myself for a minute about whether I was going to ask anybody else because of ego or whatever it was myself, like who people are using. I texted 3 other people in the neighborhood that I know. Who are you using for your house insurance? Are you satisfied with them? Are you not satisfied? And I learned so much just from doing that because there's other people, similar struggles. One of them was like, I've been thinking about the same thing. Who are you using? Like, and the other two, like, I got with so-and-so. I didn't like it. I went there, da-da-da. So much information. And if we share that information, now we're moving with momentum as opposed to just being locked in your head or inertia. And, I need to deal with that and never deal with that. It was powerful for me because I realized how I had to check my own attitude that finally put me in action.
We're talking about insurance. I want to jump on that real quick. Like the other financial decisions we have to make, none of us were prepared to make these decisions. Mike, to your point, we all buy insurance the same way. We go, I'll take this one. We have no education on how to buy insurance.
Right.
I'm going to share another anecdote or a simple illustration. Everybody you know drives a car. And I would bet you that 98 out of 100 people have no idea what their car insurance covers. State minimum. Every insurance policy, yours, mine, everybody listening, insurance policies are based on 3 numbers. And they are separated by a slash. State minimums are typically 25, 50, 25. Your policy's based on that. My policy's based on that. Nobody even knows that's how it's based. But we're all bombarded with TV commercials. Give us 15 minutes, we can save you money on your insurance. Sure we can. All we have to do is undercover you. Let me just tell everybody listening how easy it is to learn about money. Those three numbers, the first number, they're limits. The first number is how much the insurance company will pay for bodily injury. State minimum is $25,000. Second number is how much they'll pay for everybody you injure in an accident. That's $50,000. Third number is how much they'll pay for property damage. State minimum 25, 50, 25. They're only going to pay $25,000. Guess who gets to pay the rest of that? That would be you. So if you get one of these reduced costs for car insurance and you T-bone a Mercedes SUV with 4 NBA players in it, you're going to be buried the rest of your life with your wages garnishing. They could have told us that in high school about car insurance, homeowners insurance. They try to get us to buy life insurance. Everybody doesn't need life insurance. They're just basic fundamentals that we can all learn. And I'm just going to put a word on top of all of the comments that have been shared so far. Max started it. Mike, you co-signed it. And Sekou, you co-signed it. But in the core of all of that, we have to decide. Nobody can make us stop living in poverty. We have to decide. We are not victims. We are not powerless. Talk to each other, make a decision. You don't even have to know how to pull it off. Just decide it's not going to be that way another year for me. That's the place to start. Just decide.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if we could cue that video too, because I want to touch on that too, on that this piece about deciding how to get the help to do that.
There you go. And I think Zanib had a question.
Oh,
Or had a point.
Oh no, it was just a quick point. I mean, I'm really loving the energy here from Mike to Eric. Just one little addition on my end. You know, we often don't ask ourselves questions, right? We never ask, well, how do I find about, money management? How do I find about credit scores? How do I find about this and that? And it's okay. There is no age limit when it comes to asking questions about your finances. There is, unfortunately, the stigma attached to when you become an adult, you have to know all of these things. And that's not really true. I'm 30. There are still questions that I have. And just to quickly shout out to Eric for dropping knowledge right now, because some of the things you mentioned, I didn't know. And it's because, well, I didn't think about them before. So it's, one thing we as city workers ask when we do canvassing events, when we go out in the field and talk to communities, we let them know, please ask us questions, because that's why we're here. We're here to help. We're here to provide guidance and provide a network where if there's a question about how you can manage your credit card debt, well, hey, we can connect you to our Office of Financial Empowerment. We can connect you to other type of resources that can help to intertwine or help to connect you to other type of solutions. So that's I think the one thing that I really want folks to understand is you have to ask questions, especially when it comes to your finances.
That's great. David, this was one quick word. Dave Direct set it up. But once again, if you have people in YouTube land, if you have some questions, put them in the chat. Make sure we get the questions after this story about Brian Bannister, who's a great friend of mine. I love him dearly. Hopefully we can get to some of the questions maybe in the chat. So go ahead, Dave.
My name is Brian. I'm a 56-year-old New York City father of 3 wonderful children, ages 26, 23, and 3. Yes, I have a 3-year-old. I've faced many challenges in my lifetime, and I've had to rely on a lot of help in order to get where I am today. I've sat across the desks of many a caseworker wondering not only if they can help me fix my current situation, but also help me put the pieces of my life back in place. It's been extremely humbling as an adult, a man, and as a father to ask for help. The good thing is that if it weren't for those people willing to do the work on the front lines, face to face, every day, I might not have arrived at my current destination, which by all accounts is simply a miracle. I wanted fathers to know that when you're seeking help, there are a few things I would suggest you leave at home. Leave any bad past experiences with a caseworker. Leave your pride and also your ego at home. I think it's only then that you'll be ready to be honest and fully transparent, and then the caseworker will have the opportunity to serve you successfully. There are all types of services available in this city. Many of them happen to employ very good people that want nothing more than to help you succeed. And as the two of you work together, the broken pieces are put back in place, and now light begins to shine through the cracks in your life. I'm very grateful for those people who helped me to help myself. I want the dads out there to know not to be afraid to ask for help. That when you become a father, you are no longer an individual, and that everything you do impacts on your children and your family. I've gone from being homeless, formerly incarcerated, unemployed, to being a recognized member in the responsible fatherhood movement. Thank you to everyone who helped me get where I am today.
Wow.
Thank you so much for
So,
playing that.
so
And for those of us who know Brian Bannister, he passed a few years ago, but we wanted to play that video for a number of reasons. His legacy lives on, his story lives on. It was so powerful, just how he gave his life every day to the responsible fatherhood movement in New York City. But one of the things that Brian said and always talked about was asking for help, and really tried to utilize all the resources at his disposal, whether it was here at the Office of Child Support Services, other city agencies, or other partners and colleagues in the responsible fatherhood movement. And I think that's one of the things that we talked about in terms of overcoming the fear. It's knowing that you are in fact not alone. In reality, in the moment, in your situation, you may feel like you're alone, but in fact that there are a number of city agencies and partners that can help you. To begin, as Brian talked about, seeing the light through the cracks. And so I want to just start some of my comments by saying, the Office of Child Support Services has a number of resources, much like our colleagues, Zanib and Max, they just went through a name change. We went through a name change as well. We were primarily known as the Office of Child Support, Office of Child Support Enforcement. And now we are the Office of Child Support Services. So while the enforcement piece is very much a real part of what we do, because we are also a federal program, what we wanted to emphasize with that name change was the many services that we have to offer. We wanted to begin. We knew the history that the child support program has in this country, and certainly in many communities around New York City. What we wanted to do was begin to remove the fear associated with coming through the door at the Office of Child Support Services, or even in the pandemic, contacting us through an email for a virtual phone appointment. So while we are a child-centered program and we emphasize that, we have really shifted our perspective and approach over the last decade plus to really align with all the social science research that's out there that says that dads want to be involved in the life of their children. Now, we know that non-resident parents can be mothers too, but oftentimes we do see non-residential parents being, for the most part, fathers. And in many cases in the city, we're talking about low-income dads and dads of color. And so we really want to say every chance we get that the Office of Child Support Services believes that, generally speaking, parents want to be a positive force in the life of their children. And we really do believe that in most cases, and when they're healthy and when they're able to do it, that dads want to be actively involved in the lives of their children. And when they are, we know that you see all better results across every aspect of life for those children. And so we really, look forward to continuing this part of the conversation, and talking more about our resources and services. But don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to reach out to those around you. You might be very surprised what they have to offer, particularly when you're talking about our city agencies.
But Alan, I gotta tease you. That video is definitely worth waiting for. You gotta play the video. Play the video. Play the video. Brian, it was a remarkable man, and rest his soul. And one of the things that really strikes me in this moment is how Brian's life and his journey, just there in the video. Like, you don't have to have known Brian personally. It's right there in the video. It reflects what Eric said a few minutes ago, which is, I'm glad Eric interjected before we watched the video, about how an individual makes a decision, I want my life to change. You don't have to know how to do it, but beginning with the will, saying, I want to figure out how to do it. And then boom, resources start lining up. You start identifying resources. You start moving with people in your network. Listen in that short 2 minutes to all of the challenges that Brian said he was facing. And when he left us, those of us that know, all of the work that he was doing and what he's engaged in, and how he was able to stabilize himself and his family, any of us can work with what we've got, and all of us are charged to work with what we got. And the thing is, how do we kind of dig down and reinvest in ourselves, and then start making use of the information? So I don't want to go on too long, but I was just really struck by that, and I hope that that others will also spend some time about how those things need to intersect and how to make sure that they intersect.
I'm going to add a point in there. I'm going to add a point in there. I think it's important here because regardless of what we all talk about, one of the things that we will all remember from this barbershop talk today is what Sekou said, which is keep it 700 plus. That's something we will all remember. And in thinking about that and how important that is, and I'm going to hand it back to you, Sekou. I think what happens is, and Eric talked about this, the cup of coffee is easy to get, right? It's a Starbucks on most corners, and it's easy, you can get to that. So it's easy for me to spend that money, but it may not be that easy to get educated on why your credit score is important and who's rating you. Does anybody understand, or do they talk about Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, and educate people on what 700 plus really is? And then how easy it is. There's a Chase on many corners as well. Why isn't there? And there's, and Sekou was saying this, so that's why I'm gonna hand it back to you so you can share some of this. Is there, you can easily save that $4 a day and have it automatically taken out. That's what you just told us, right? So there's tools now, technological tools that allow for that to take place. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, the other thing I'll say, because I like Eric's point about the 5 other impacts of buying the car. Well, credit is the 6th and one of the predominant ones, because you and I could buy the same car. You and I could buy the same house. But if your credit score is lower, then you're going to pay more for it. It doesn't matter that the purchase price is the same. Doesn't matter, any of that. It's the credit score is a reflection of what is perceived as the inherent risk of you paying something back. And so what are the components of that? Understanding, your payment history, or what is your available credit, like all of those details. I mean, it becomes important because if you don't know, I remember personally, way back when I started on Wall Street, I thought just income equaled credit score. No, it doesn't matter how much money you make. Your credit score is totally different, right? So unless you're taught or learn or discuss these things, you don't know. And the other thing I'll just add to, which I loved about the video, as a person thinketh, so is he or she, right? And so if you've already acknowledged, how am I going to do this? I can't do this. You've committed your mental energy to why you can. So I want to challenge everyone to think about why you can and how are you going to, and what are the resources you're going to use. And you're going to walk into any bank branch. It could be a Chase because there are people who will help you, but any bank branch, we care more about you getting the insight that you need. And it could start with the city, but get it. Make that commitment, make that decision, as Eric said, to recognize what you can do instead of focusing on why you can't or what you can't.
What you can do is key, because what you can do, one, you have to know that it's possible. That's what I loved about that video. My way of looking at the world is, if somebody else has done something, we don't have to debate if it's possible. And if he's done it, I can do it. At the core of that journey is education. And that's why, and I'm going to keep pounding this in, that's why we created a course with all 8 chapters on how to do the things we're doing. Credit score. If your credit score is under 700, everything you do in life is going to cost you more than even wealthy people. It's ridiculous. And yet we don't get education on how credit scores work. And it's not intuitive. You would think, for example, that if you have 3 credit cards with big balances and you pay them down to 0, my credit score is going to go up. Nope, it's going to go down because you just reduced your available credit. The rules are not hard to learn, but if you don't learn the rules, you can't use the system. You have to commit, invest, look for, take part in education, coaches, counselors, and talk to each other. You can't figure this thing out in thin air. Doesn't work that way.
Which is a good place for me to jump
Go ahead,
in.
Max.
I got a quick reaction I want to follow up with. Go ahead, Max.
Oh, I was just going to say, speaking about credit, our financial counselors, we deal with a lot of things. One of the beautiful things about the financial empowerment centers is that the heart and soul of what we do is help people with their credit and their debt. Somebody comes to us, and since the pandemic started, we've been working remotely. You come to us, in the first session, typically, we'll pull your credit report. And if anybody watching has ever pulled their credit report, it's a mess. Not yours specifically. Reading a credit report is an incredibly difficult thing to do. It was not meant to be read by the public. That was designed intentionally. It was only meant to be read by professionals so that it could be kept industry specific. Coming to a financial empowerment center, coming to a financial counselor, talking to somebody who has experience reading credit reports, that's when you begin to understand that not only is the score so important, but what's on there is important. And understanding what's on there will lead you to a better score. It's so crucial. It's so hard. And Eric, I couldn't agree more. There's so few resources out there. There's so little education. The program that I work on was created in 2008 when there was a survey done across New York City that said, have you ever had any level of financial education? From your parents, from your high school, from your college, from your priest, from anybody. 72% of people said that they hadn't received anything. And the city said at that point, that's unacceptable. We may not be in the schools, we may not be providing that financial education when they're younger. We're only one program. But what we do is we help people get the financial education when they're looking for it. Credit is a huge part of that. Going to a professional is crucial.
Max, before I jump in, do you have a website, anything you want to share with anyone out there?
Yeah, absolutely. For all the resources that we provide, they can go to nyc.gov/talkmoney. Anybody who wants to learn a little bit about what we do, make an appointment with one of our financial counselors, that can be done online. Alternatively, if somebody calls 311 and says, I would like to talk to a financial counselor, you'll get put in touch with our call center and answer most of your questions and make an appointment for you.
Awesome. I'm actually going to be the protagonist in this conversation, only because say, cool, I love what you're saying. Eric, where were you when I was 16, right? I bring this all up only because before, I love the emotion of money, like what happens when you get attached to the emotion of money, but I actually challenge the thought of us not talking about money. And I'm going to speak to like my millennial crew, anybody who was 16 and in between like high school and college. I'm speaking directly to you. There's conversations about money. There's not one high school kid that I know or college kid that's not talking about money, how to hustle it, but where they're getting their information from between pyramid schemes and everything else. The quick way to get cash, that's what they see, and how the cash moves is the new Jordans or the new car. They don't really see what that looks like. And I can't even say that I've got caught up into it. And it took me going through the whole cycle of being humbled by money, learning what that actually looks like. I even, for anyone like Dave Ramsey, just understanding my baby steps and what savings look like and all that good stuff. But that level of financial literacy for pre-debt, like I've known youth that their parents got credit cards on them. And by the time they even realized what money was, they were already in debt, right? And so they were like, whoa, what just happened? And so I guess my ask is, how do we now communicate in layman terms to our youth? Like, yes, I see what you're saying about money, but this is how we keep it 700 and clean, right? You don't have to like hustle and then put it underneath the mattress or wherever. Like, this is how money really moves and how you can really build wealth to where you don't have to worry about it. Like I talk to my daughter now about IRAs, and she just finally understands, oh, I can really build something long-term, So that type of conversations, that's my ask to the panel, because I actually challenge, there is conversations about money. I just think there's a lot of misinformation about it.
So Jerry, one of the things we did, go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry, real quick, Jerry, I'm gonna jump on the first question you asked, which is, Where can we get education about? Is there a website? My website is called decisionsnow.com. And on that website is a self-paced online course that covers budgeting, home ownership, savings and investment, getting out of credit card debt, buying insurance. All the things we're talking about is self-paced and is on that website, decisionsnow.com. I'm going to highlight, Jerry, something you said. The conversations that young people are having about money is primarily how to access money, but there's not so much about how to keep money or make money build wealth for you. They're literally getting the wrong end of that picture. I saw a video this morning that one of my co-workers sent to me. It was Shaquille O'Neal talking about how he spent $1 million in a day. He got $1 million check in the morning. And he said first thing he did was he went to the dealer, got himself a brand new Mercedes, got home and his dad said, "Where's mine?" He said, "Well, I got $1 million. I spent $150, got $850 left. Bought my dad one, bought my mom one. I had one, bought some ice. And then I got a call from my manager. He said, you just spent $1 million. He said, how did I spend $1 million? And he said, you got FICA? He said, FICA? I don't know nobody named FICA. It goes like this.
Yeah.
Not about how much you get. It's about how much you keep. That's what we have to educate each other on.
The other thing I'll just add really quickly, just to jump in, one of the things we did with Advancing Black Pathways, we created with our partners, Essence Currency Conversations, really to reach communities. We focused on women because Essence obviously is a magazine or media that caters to women, but we expanded it to chase chats. And so, what we realized is millennials, some people want to consume things like in snippets online. Like they don't want to go read through a book. And so we have some of these chase chats with, and we've had some partnerships with Uninterrupted of different athletes even that tell their money stories and what they've learned and some of their experience. So it's all on our chase. If you go, I'm gonna give you, if you just Google Chase Chats, all the website will come up and you'll see videos, and then there are different double clicks you can do on different topics. But the point is, you go to all of them or any of them, like just go to one of the sources and really check out the information that's available.
And I'd also say, the question, let me just say this too, the question that was being asked about, speaking to young people, with Office of Child Support Services now is really trying to develop an intervention to better support mothers and fathers, really ages 24 and younger, as they navigate the child support program. We're really trying to improve outcomes for those young parents. And so the majority of them, again, are low-income parents, come from low-income households. And the hope is that really taking a true generational approach, because if they can better navigate the child support program, that can hopefully better ensure that their children are also coming out of poverty and reducing poverty in their lives. But really, our goal is to really successfully deliver comprehensive services to these young parents. We have about 16,000 active cases with parents ages 24 and younger. That's around 4% of our caseload. And we recognize that we really have a unique opportunity to intervene with young parents that we really haven't been taken advantage of. And so we're really trying to launch this new effort where each young parent would be assigned a navigator. And its navigators would walk alongside young mothers and young fathers, particularly within a judicial model. And with the idea is that they really get understanding around connecting them to education, employment, and other services. So today, if a young parent walked into one of our offices, not during the pandemic, but walked in pre-pandemic, right, to try to get help, they probably would be treated as no different than if they were 35, 45, 55, right? But this effort that we're trying to develop now, we're going to be launching in the near future, will hopefully turn that on its head. Because we're going to offer them the opportunity not just to go the regular judicial model, where you would go into court to get a child support order, but we'd also say, did you know that mediation was available? We know that mediation can be a less contentious situation, particularly for anybody, but certainly for young people. And so why put them in that kind of contentious situation in a court setting when if we say, if you're open to it, you can go the way of mediation and you can have somebody who will walk with the both of you through a process where the non-residential parent would be paying a child support order that they can actually afford. And so just to talk about, again, it's a little bit of a different angle, but this is once a young parent is paying child support, once a young parent is receiving child support, how about trying to get them into the program in a way that it's healthier, less contentious, and in a way that's going to actually help them along the path with connecting them with education and employment and those other things that can help to get to some of the points that you guys are talking about, right? So they can not just pay their child support, but do the other things they need to do, like create a budget, like begin to be more thoughtful about how they're spending their money day to day, not just on their children, but also on themselves, so they can set a pathway for themselves and their families.
There it is.
Alan,
Sekou had said something that struck something for me. And I'd love to, I'm really going to hand it to Zanib. I would love to hear in a room full of men, how are women having conversations about money with their mothers or fathers?
Sure, I can definitely shed some light on that. As far as us women, I mean, I've always looked up to my mother. She's always been kind of the head boss when it comes to managing finances. And she always told me to, if you can, always live within, or if anything, under your means, because that way you collect way less debt. You're able to pay your credit card, on time, and you're still able to have not only a bank account, but have a savings for either a rainy day or down the line if you need to purchase a house. I know with women, we've and by women I mean my girlfriends and my cousins. We often talk about owning our own houses and trying to really connect with other women who are within the financial industry and really building a network of strong independent women who are able to manage their finances, because and strictly talking and from a woman of color, a South Asian woman, it's and often a cultural kind of a barrier for us too, where there are certain expectations where, oh yeah, you need to get married, and then the husband takes care of all of the financial situations when it comes to managing the house and the budget. But I feel like there are a lot more women who are really coming into their own and wanting to educate themselves and asking questions about how to not just manage finances, but how to make more and how to possibly get into mutual funds and to even in the stocks. So there is a lot of conversations definitely going on. So yeah.
I want to move the conversation a little bit with the group. Now, we talked about a lot about wanting to be able to get some money, and I'm going to use the stimulus money that the government is giving out right now. So, there's an extra 200 or 300, I think it's 250 or 300 for families that are coming in now. And he said about, putting some money aside. So that's some extra money coming in. Where are places where you can put money aside that's going to grow the money, that's not going to take more of the interest of the money that you get back? There's some financial institutions, they take your money and they make a lot of money off of it and give you a nickel back. But where are there places where those who may have that Starbucks $4, that they can say, well, listen, I take this Starbucks $4, and how do I make it $5?
So without jumping in really quickly, go ahead.
I'm just going to say you can talk about products all day, every day. I'm not going to go there. I do just want to mention that the 250, the 300 you're getting per child is all coming for the child tax credit. The one thing to keep in mind about that is most people are used to getting the full amount of a child tax credit come tax time. Most people are used to getting that money in one bulk sum in February, March, maybe April. The one thing to take into consideration is that there is more money going into the child tax credit now, but that $300 a month, that $250 a month, might be the same money that you were already planning on spending. And so don't necessarily think of it as new money. It's the same money being dispersed better throughout the year so that people can use it more effectively. The one thing that my office is really preaching is, don't think of it as extra money because that's going to get you in trouble.
And that's what I was going to actually say as well. And the only thing I'll add to that, it still goes back to all the other topics, the budgeting, et cetera. And so before you want to jump and think about investing, if you have a credit card with 16% interest, that means you need to return 16% on any of your investments for that money to be worthwhile. So if you have debt, it's better to have your plan to pay down your debt than to just jump, in investing. And I'm not saying everyone's situation is different. So it's not like a broad brush. So I'll have to say that as well. But you want to look comprehensively at your entire balance sheet, understand what your debts are. And it's not to say that you can't simultaneously invest a little and create, but let it be a plan. Let it be something that you set aside and you say, you know what, I'm going to not spend that $4, like Eric said, and I'm going to do X, Y, Z, right? So let it be an offset or decision based on everything you're working with versus, the notion of, more money's coming in, let me just do something that's not connected or anchored to my broader strategy. What's my financial plan? Like the banks, you, city, that's what they're going to work on, a financial plan for you, putting it down so you understand. And then anything that comes in that happens to be an addition that was unexpected as a positive, you now have a framework where you could leverage that. Like, no, I'm not just going to go out and buy the new Jordans. Like, I know that I'm saving for something. I have some savings goals, right? So I'm going to buy those Jordans when I set aside enough money, not just because I got an unexpected, windfall.
Let me add to that. This is which effectively you said is something that I hope our listeners will write this down. Delayed gratification.
Yes.
Delayed gratification. Now, Jerry made a point earlier where he said there's money conversations being had right now everywhere and amongst young people. And the good and bad about what has happened during the pandemic, the meme stocks that came out, GameStop and AMC and people opening up Robinhood accounts or whatever it was, or people saying, hey, look, I'm trading options, or I'm trading currencies, or I'm into cryptocurrency right now. It's all there. Why? Because people believe that there's a fast way to make money. And unfortunately, we as humans all want at times to get things fast. We want to get rich fast. We want to lose weight fast. We want to build muscle fast. And anytime someone sells us on something that's actually possible, people try it. The reality is there's nothing that's going to happen fast. That's actually, but no, there's people who make money in crypto. There's people who've made money in the meme stocks. We know that, but they're not telling you the other end of it when they lost it. So what is important is going to your local bank branch or going to an advisor who can provide you with the guidance to do what Eric said earlier, which is begin the process of saving, understand the tools that are available. So I heard Zanib talk about IRAs or mutual funds and stocks. Well, mutual funds can be made up of stocks and or bonds, but understand what those tools are and understand what they pay. Understand what a bank savings account is going to pay you as far as interest versus what a CD might pay you for interest or what other items are going to pay you for interest. We have to be willing to engage in the activity of investing for the long term with the opportunity to make money on short term. It's easy to go buy a pair of Jordans for $300 and it's immediate gratification because everybody will look and ooh and ah. But when you have the opportunity later on to buy 10 pair of Jordans for other people, yourself and other people in your family, that's where the power is.
And let me just jump in really quickly on one point on investing, just really quickly, because what will inevitably happen if you don't have that long-term perspective, you put money away with a quick, fast mentality, and then you have your emergency. You don't have your emergency fund. Now you have to sell and liquidate that stock, and the market could have moved in another direction. So now you've lost money, and you even have less money to really meet your emergency. That's why it has to be part of a plan. Nothing really can be just one decision. It needs to be connected to the bigger plan. That's the same with life. That's the same with career. There's so many other factors that you should be considering. So it can't just be, I wake up today and got some money I'm going to invest. It's like, where is that in your plan? That's what you want to think about.
And I also want to say too, this, I want our listeners to really see this, what's happening here tonight. You have a barbershop conversation, right? So you have city agencies, you've got JP Morgan Chase, you've got entrepreneurs, you've got others talking about financial management. I want our listeners to know that the city is really trying to be more thoughtful and innovative in terms of how we are sharing information and how we're getting that information out, and how we're not just getting the information out there, but trying to help people to be able to take hold of it and actually utilize it, right? And so want to say that the Office of Child Support Services, we have worked in the past with our Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. We've done sort of pop-ups with that organization where we've actually had them come out to the Office of Child Support Services, where we did special events for OCSS staff to help them with their child support matters. And then we had the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection there on site, also being offering their services and resources. We're going to be working with them soon to offer training to their staff. Their staff are going to be training our staff, right? So again, we're not just trying to be a one-trick pony, right? So it's not just our staff talking clearly about child support, which is obviously what we do every day, but we also want our staff to be thoughtful about, well, as you're trying to manage your child support debt, did you also know about the offerings of the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection? And if you're scared or concerned about walking through the doors at 151 West Broadway when we reopen our customer service walk-in center, did you know about the Department of Youth Community Development's fatherhood programs? Did you know that those fatherhood programs, that once you join those programs and they are working with you, they will walk in with you, okay, into our offices and sit with you. Or if you give them permission, they'll actually get on a call with you. We actually do calls now in the pandemic virtually. You can email us, and that information I think is going to be shared in the YouTube chat. You can actually email us, get on a virtual call, and if you're concerned, you can actually have someone else on the call. Just let us know in advance. Some community-based organizations, again, to help you feel comfortable and walk you through the process. But I also want to say something about debt reduction. So we have a number of debt reduction programs where if debt is owed to the Department of Social Services, that is owed to the government, we have a number of programs that can help reduce that debt. And we get it. Overwhelmingly, it's child support. Child support debt really contributes not just the non-payment of current obligations, but also mental and emotional stress on the non-residential father and on the family. And that stress leads to challenges, not just with paying your child support, but also with connecting with your child. If you have that level of financial and emotional stress on you, it makes it very difficult for you to see past that, particularly if you're living outside of the home, to make the next step sometimes to connect with your child because of the pressure and stress that you feel. And so, again, we have a number of debt reduction programs. We have our arrears cap program where if you, accrued debt while you were under the federal poverty guidelines or the guidelines for the state, you fill out the application, provide us with the paperwork, and we're going to cap that arrears at $500. We have a arrears credit program where if you're paying your child support regularly through garnishment of your paycheck, well, make that work for you. Sign up for the arrears credit program. And if you owe debt to the Department of Social Services, $5,000 annually can be wiped off of your child support debt owed to the government when you make that full payment each month. We also have a pay it off program, which is a time limited program where we will make a matching program offered during a limited time to help pay off debt again. And we have a parent success program where if someone completes a drug addiction program, again, we will work with them to reduce up to $10,000 in arrears owed to the city of New York, to the government. And so what am I trying to say here? We have a number of programs, and they are underutilized. Since 2010, nearly $230 million has been reduced in debt owed to the Department of Social Services as a result of these programs. But they're often not used, they're underutilized, and we understand why. People are afraid to come in. But we also know that there are organizations like the Department of Youth and Community Development, like our partners here at, I want to make sure I get it right, the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, Zanib, Max, and their team, that also will be directing their clients to us as well to get the help that they need around debt reduction. And so again, you know, when we talk about debt reduction, we know that there's a retail debt, but there's also this other kind of debt that many times people don't even know where to begin to attack.
Let me jump in real quick. Oh, sorry, Mike, were you saying something?
No, I was gonna invite Sekou because I know he had to log off. He had a final word. I'm not sure if he's still here, if he had to sign off. Take it away, Max.
Thank you. Yeah, he did a great job. I'm sorry I didn't get a last word in. I was just gonna say something something I think about a lot, something I've been thinking a lot about tonight is a lot of people are at that starting point when it comes to their own financial security, when it comes to their own financial health. And we talk a lot about, you know, why they're at the starting point, what things they need to do, but starting is the hardest part. I mean, that's my opinion. I think that's probably something we could all agree on. When I talk to somebody and they don't exactly know where to start, I always recommend that they start with a budget, that they start just by listing what they spend and what they make and seeing how those balance out. I guess just for everybody else here, I pose the question, where would you guys start? Would you start with the budget? Would you jump right into credit? Would you jump right into, you know, insurance? Just from an education, a counseling, and starting point perspective, if you're working with somebody who isn't sure where they are, where they're going, how do you approach it?
I can tell you how we structured the educational courses. We start with budget. If you don't understand those basic fundamentals of consequential costs, if you cannot pay your bills, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you can't pay your bills, it's hard to think about investing. It's hard to think about home ownership, et cetera. I think you have to start with budget. And then right after budget, I think you have to address credit. Those are the two enabling skill sets. My opinion, number 3, home ownership. And let me just make a couple comments about home ownership so that our listeners don't think this doesn't apply to them. It's real simple. If you can rent, you can own. If you can rent, you can own. If you can afford first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit, that's all you needed for a down payment to own a home. The reason that's important is home ownership builds wealth 7 ways. 7. I'll give you just one of them. If I own a home and I'm paying $1,000 a month and you're renting and you're paying $1,000 a month, and my home is on a 15-year mortgage, if I do that at age 22, at age 37, I'm rent free for the rest of my life. If you're paying $1,000 a month, let me be clear, that's $12,000 a year. If at age 37, I'm rent free and I live till 87, that's 50 years. My buddy who's paying rent, he's paying $12,000 a year, assuming his rent doesn't go up for 50 years. What's 50 years times $12,000? That's $750,000 that person will pay in rent that somebody who owns a home didn't have to pay. And you can't tell me people can't come up with a down payment to own a home. Anybody listening, you know, and I know that if you, your brother, your sister, or your cousin was getting married 6 months from now, they'd find a way to pay for that wedding.
Eric,
We're gonna have a wedding. Now,
so Eric, I have a question for you because this is great. But I want to get real down and dirty now. I'm a parent of 3. I make $20,000 a year because I'm, you know, and maybe I'm public assistant. Where do I start?
Okay, so if you, let's say you make $20,000 a year, you're living on public assistance, but the truth is you have a residence someplace. You are living somewhere. You're paying rent. Let me just give you the basics. Your landlord is not subsidizing your living expenses. Your landlord is making money off of your rent. If you own the property, you be making that money. There's 50 ways to buy a house. If I'm in public assistance and I'm living in a marginal location, I'm paying the lowest rent that I can. So are two of my buddies. Let's go in and buy a house together, and I'll buy a house with two roommates. There's a way to buy a house. Your credit is bad. If you Google right now, Google your zip code, Google homes for sale, and type in the following words, 100% seller financing. There are homeowners who want to sell their homes so they can go retire in Florida. They will finance the home themselves, and in seller financing, there are no rules, and it doesn't matter what your credit is. There's a way to own a home. Don't let anybody tell you you cannot own a home. I have one last anecdote. I read this in a book. My goodness, 25 years ago. It said, when your kid goes to college, don't put him in a dormitory, buy a house and rent it out to three of his roommates. My son graduated Morgan State University. We bought a house, and I told my son, I said, look, I want you to get three roommates. Instead of living in the dorm, they live in your house. You collect the rent, you be the landlord. And if you do that, when you graduate, we'll sell the house and I'll give you half of whatever the proceeds are. I bought that house for $60,000. 4 years later, on the campus, just on the edge of campus of Morgan State University in inner city Baltimore, Maryland, we sold that house for $160,000. When my son graduated, I wrote him a check for $50,000, and it did. You know what it cost me? My down payment was $2,400. I wrote that kid a check for $50,000. You know what the first thing he did was? Put a down payment and bought a house.
See,
Thank you, Dad.
That's right.
what the
Thank you,
person
Dad.
said. I love you.
Exactly.
thank you, Dad.
But again,
Oh my
that's really how,
Securing my future and showing me the path.
yeah, that's how wealth is passed,
That is
right? And so we see this happen. I saw that happen in college. I remember there were two ladies from Atlanta. They were twins. Their parents had come down and bought them a house, and they lived in that house. They had a roommate, rented out. That was a great move. Obviously, my mother was not in that position, but I watched these things go on. And the challenge that we all face is we want everything we see. TV and
Right.
commercials are built
Yeah.
to get you to be a consumer. And there's nothing wrong with being a consumer. But what are you willing to sacrifice? We all have to sacrifice something. What are you willing to sacrifice to have something later on? And one of the first things I did when I graduated college and came to New York to start my job, my career, was I did two things. One was I started an IRA. So I started saving $200 a month in my IRA, and it's automatic. It's still automatic to this day, and it's grown to a substantial amount. The other thing that was with Invesco. At the time, it was AIM. So you see the acquisitions that now have become Invesco. The other thing I did was I began to contact those credit rating agencies that we talked about, that we all should know about, and wanted to understand what my credit was, what my credit rating was. Because I knew when I first got to college, and this doesn't happen anymore, but Mike, everyone else, we all know when you got to college, the credit card companies were there handing you out a free credit card if you wanted
Oh
it.
my goodness, yeah.
You remember that?
Oh, yes.
You filled out,
They
it
still
was
do
water
it. They
bottles.
still do it.
They still do it.
They still do it.
Oh, do they? Okay.
They still do it.
I did a keynote speech for all 5 graduating seniors houses of Towson State University, and about personal finance. And while I was teaching them about avoiding credit card debt, Visa was signing up people for credit cards outside the room I was teaching in, kids that didn't have jobs. That's how fast we get saddled into living paycheck to paycheck for the rest of our lives. I
You know,
opened up that keynote. I asked them, if you splurge and you get it, you thank your family for supporting you in college, you got a $2,000 credit card and you buy Christmas gifts and you're fiscally responsible. You never charge another dime and you never miss a minimum monthly payment on that 24% credit card. How long will it take you to pay off that $2,000? The answer is 22 years. And you pay $8,400 for that $2,000. There wasn't a kid on that campus who knew that when they were signing up for that credit card.
Yeah.
The reason we're in debt, it's not hard to understand. Nobody explained it to us. We have choices.
That's right.
Quick reaction. Quick reaction. Yeah.
Dale, if I could go back in time when you and I were first in college, I could show your mom and my mom how they could have bought houses for us too.
Over.
They just didn't know how.
They didn't know how.
Quick reaction. Yeah.
I got one after you, Jerry.
Got you. I'm gonna make this quick. First off, I'm gonna start calling Eric Dr. Richardson because he's just destroying this right now. I just gotta he's just dropping it. The other way, right. Oh gosh, the other part is, again, for everyone listening, it doesn't matter where you're on the platform. This is about how we are spending and utilizing money, right? And so Scott brought up, hey, if you're on public assistance, I'm gonna bring it up another notch. I had the fortune of being on the practice team of the Jets. And so what that looks like, you get paid weekly. Scott knows what I'm talking about because he was a pro. I didn't even make that level, but all that, you get a substantial check weekly. I know people with that substantial check still broke every week because of the mindset and the culture. And even to this day, there are people who, because they feel that they have money in their pocket, but nothing in the bank, they think they're not broken. Most people don't realize they're broke until they're broken, until like the system actually just crippled the very end of, wow, I realized I never had money to begin with. Amen. And so as we dive into, now we're talking about like just generational poverty, right? As we dive into that, just what are some things that can break that culture mindset? Because it doesn't matter where you're on a platform. You could hit the lotto and be broke next week. It didn't matter. What are some things that we need to do to break the culture of poverty, right? Because there's some people who are sitting in it thinking, well, this is it. This is my life. This is what it looks like. So how do we break that?
I want to give you something on that, but I know Alan had a point. Go ahead, Alan.
Thanks a lot, Dale. Before we talk about the culture of poverty, I also want to say, something that was being referred to earlier. Of course, one second. Right. So I think the question was, where do we start? Where do we begin? And I think one thing you got to really understand is, what are your debts? And again, when it comes to child support debt, many times people don't even know what they owe. They don't really even know what they owe. They don't know what they owe. And child support debt is broken up two parts. You can owe debt to the government, and you can owe debt to the residential parent, or otherwise known as the custodial parent. And so that's when we talk about our debt reduction programs, we talk about the debt owed to the government versus not. But oftentimes people don't even know where to begin with that, because they don't even know what they owe. So you can't even attack it. So retail debt, right? You get a bill every month, and you take a look at it, and you owe Macy's this much and Macy's that much. But oftentimes, when it comes to the Office of Child Support Services, folks are so frustrated by the system and by the process, so angry at what has happened in their lives or to them, however you want to look at it, that they don't even open up their mail. In some instances, they're just afraid to open up their mail. They don't even open up their mail. I'm sure that happens with retail debt too, but certainly with the child support services, we hear that all the time. People didn't even open their mail. And so again, what I want to encourage folks to do is to work with folks like the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. So some of them, I think they have some of the community-based organizations that are using their platform, right? They've got something that we use called the Child Support Snapshot. And the Child Support Snapshot is essentially an opportunity for a community-based organization to literally get a snapshot of a client's child support with their permission, and then be able to explain to them, okay, these are the steps that you need to take to address matters of debt, etc. The hope is that they may have a better relationship with that community-based organization than they do with us, right? And be less afraid in taking that next step. So work with Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, work with DYCD's fatherhood programs, right? Because again, they'll be willing to walk alongside you to begin to address these things so that you take that first step to finding out exactly what you're dealing with when it comes to your debt. Work with another great organization, Legal Information for Families Today. We should provide that link somewhere. Legal Information for Families Today. They will also walk you through matters around family court, the do's and the don'ts, right? What happens when you actually show up to court, which we would definitely suggest. Oftentimes that's why folks get an order that they can't pay, is because they don't show up to court. But if you show up to court with one of these trusted partners, with someone that will help walk you through the process, you can begin to know what debt you're dealing with, the programs and services that are available to you to help you see if you're eligible, to help you pay down that debt, get rid of that debt in some instances, and begin along a path where you can begin to think about your financial future alongside this.
Yeah. I tell you this. Here's why it's unfortunate, Jerry. I said this before. The delayed gratification is very hard, right? It doesn't matter if you're wealthy or somewhat have some form of money or have none. You want to feel good about whatever yourself, and so we could be in a low income family, public housing, whatever it is, and still have very nice clothes, really expensive shoes, all the things that depreciate, and we're not really thinking about. If I took that same $300 that I've spent on a pair of retro Jordans, nothing wrong with those. Trust me, I'm sure many people have them. You could take that same money and invest it. And that's hard to do though, because first of all, you're saying, well, I might lose it. Well, okay. But you're willing to take $300 and put it on a sidewalk and get those dirty, and 6 months from now they don't mean as much to you as they do today. How about do this? Buy the Jordans, and that's fine, but also buy one share of Nike stock. And if you buy a share of Nike stock for every pair of sneakers that you buy, the stock is less than the shoe, but over time you're going to make more money because they pay a dividend. And it's a well-run company, so it's going to grow, and the growth is going to compound. So now you could take your dividend money, so they're paying you to then buy the shoes, if you think of it that way. But that's very hard to do. It's not hard to do, but it's a hard process to be disciplined enough to do. I challenge anyone listening to do exactly that. For every pair of Jordans that you are going to go buy one share of the stock of Nike, and you'll be watching that Nike stock every day, and you'll see that it's a well-run company and that the stock grows. And so now when you do buy them, not only are you paying yourself, but if you begin to accumulate enough shares where you're accumulating the dividend, and you want to take your dividend payments if you want to, and take that money and buy the stock and buy the sneakers, now they're paying you to wear them.
Dale, I will say this, Dale, and
I have another question for the group, real quickly.
okay.
So, I hear all this, and we're talking about coming out of debt. Now, if I have credit card debt and a child support debt, I got many other parts of debt. Which one should I attack first? Because I'm indebted in many different areas, which a lot of our consumers are. They have debt owed to the government, as Alan said. They have debt owed to credit cards. They have debt owed to homeowners, whatever. So there's a lot of our consumers that may be on it now. They're indebted to many organizations. Which one should they attack first to start coming out of debt, which you might would suggest, which is the one to start at.
Yeah.
I think if I could say something real quick to respond to that, and it's in line with what Dale and Eric were talking about. You know, you're talking about a change in poverty, change in culture. What does it take? And now you're asking the question, which one? I don't know. I mean, you could really, I think that's going to be a case by case situation. That's going to be a very nuanced answer based on a person's situation, you know, their financial situation, and the support that they have to do that. But I would say that part of that cultural change is to believe and know that there are answers out there for you, and that the things that we're talking about, whether you're talking about Nike stock or buying a home for your child who's going away to college so that they can, live in that home and collect rent on it. Now, some might say, well, I'm not there right now in terms of Nike stock. I'm definitely not there in terms of buying a home for my kid. But when you're hearing this conversation, begin to dream and imagine about the possibility, right? That these things are not just for those people talking on a barbershop chat or somebody else talking about this elsewhere. No, I think part of the culture change is to begin to believe that there's a possibility this could be for me too. This could be for me too. This is not just for how the other half lives. I can be part of the other half as well. And I can begin to see myself and my family in that way.
I like that.
Me-
I want to hear the panelists address your question, Scott, but I wanted to jump in just to reflect the prior point that Dale made and thinking about what Alan just said. One of the things I like, Dale, about your suggestion, you know, if you can find the money for Nike sneakers, recognize a single share of Nike stock is actually less than the stock. But over time, you develop the behavior, you buy some more, and your dividend could end up, you know, paying for the next pair of shoes. The other thing that I like about that as an idea is if I buy one share of Nike stock, with that single share, they start sending me stuff because I am a shareholder now. So they send me the prospectus. They ask me to vote on whether I agree with how the company is being run, and I have to review that. And it's real easy. I can just dial on the phone and say I agree with what the board says or I don't agree with the board says. And as I start reading that stuff, I begin to educate myself. And maybe I want to go from Nike to, using Eric's example, if my Starbucks or whatever brand of coffee is $4 or $5, maybe I give up 10 coffees and buy some Starbucks stock or whatever it is. Now I got my Nike share stock, I got my Starbucks share stock, I got my other share, and I'm really just playing with a little bit of money here or there. But they keep sending me stuff and they keep asking me, am I doing a good job running the company? And what do I think? And I start reading more and more. And, it really, a couple of years, a few years out of that my behavior shifts. And I wanted to interject because of what Alan said about the culture. So if you're listening right now and you've been listening for a while, we did months where we talked about transformation. And I like to go from session to session. Remember, sometimes we're building and scaffolding on things we've said before. This transformation we're talking about starts with you, the individual. It starts with what I believe. It starts with what Eric said about you said, well, I just want my circumstances to change. So maybe you play around. You try a few things, and they may be small things, but they initiate some new behaviors that you can react to. You don't have to go and do wild things. You don't have to try to start off by buying the Empire State Building. Do you know what I mean? You could buy a single share of stock and see how that works out for you. And I could go on. I won't go on because I saw Max and other people raise their hand and wanted to jump back in. But I like the
Jump in after
digestibility
Max.
of that. Yes.
I want to jump in after Max.
No doubt.
Okay, got you after Eric. We'll go Max and Eric, okay?
Much appreciated. And these are all great points. I almost want you guys to keep going on just because it's so inspirational. There's so much to learn, but
Yep.
I got points too, so I'm gonna make some. When it comes to paying debt, there are three things to consider as far as I'm concerned, and they're in order of most important to least important. One is the repercussions, the second is the interest rate, and the third is the amount of stress it gives you. The whole thing about debt is it's all about risk. Some people don't realize this, but if you default, if you stop paying on a credit card, you will not go to jail. There are repercussions, serious repercussions. Your credit score will go down. You can be taken to court. They can take money directly from your wages, but they can't do that until they take you to court. If you default on a federal student loan, they do not have to take you to court. They can just take money directly from you. They can take money directly from your tax return. Those are powers that the federal government reserves for itself because they are the highest level of creditor, effectively. Same with child support. You owe a lot of child support. It is more serious in terms of the repercussions, in terms of how they will collect the debt from you than a credit card, than even, let's say, your rent. There's a process for a legal process that can be drawn out quite a bit before your personal financial situation is taken into consideration. Now, the second thing is interest rate. And this is something I wish I could broadcast to the entire world, because I sat down with a lot of people doing financial counseling and just did the basics of how compound interest works. But basically, the higher the interest rate, the more money you will pay them on top of what you already owe. And that will eat into each and every payment that you make. So if I think Eric, Dale, one of you guys talked about making the minimum payment for 50 years or something like that. Yeah, Eric, you hit that one on the head. If you have a high interest rate debt and you are making the same payment across all of your debts, that high interest rate debt is going to kill you for years and years past it. You always want to pay the higher interest rate debt first to get that one out of the way. Otherwise, it will eat into your payments and you will make no dent on the principal. That being said, the third one is stress. And I mean this one very seriously, because there are times when you'll have a credit card, you'll have a collection, you'll have a bill that from a repercussion standpoint isn't serious, from an interest rate standpoint isn't serious, but it's going to eat away at you. You didn't pay AT&T, but you like the guy who worked at the store and now you're embarrassed to walk down that street. That's real, and that's super real. And if that's what's preventing you from living your best life, pay that one first. But there's a lot that goes into all three of those.
So thank you for that, Max. Scott, I got to jump in here because your question was, if you want to reduce your debt, what do you pay first? And I want to answer your question. There's two ways to approach this. One is called cascading, and one is called snowballing. Everybody listening should know these two principles. Cascading means if you look at your list of debts, look at the one that has the highest interest rate. I mentioned if you have a 24% interest rate on a $2,000 debt, it'll take you 22 years to pay it off. You're going to pay $8,400 in interest plus the $2,000 if you make the minimum monthly payment. However, if instead of making the minimum monthly payment, you add $100 to that, so you make the minimum monthly payment plus $100, you'll pay it off in 11 months, and you won't pay $8,400 in interest. You pay $700 in interest, and now it's paid off. So then you take that payment plus that extra $100 that you don't have to make anymore. You put that on the next highest credit card. You'll pay it off in 9 months or 8 months or 7 months. If you do cascading, that is the way to pay the least amount of interest, and you will probably be debt-free within 2 to 4 years, depending upon how much debt you have. Now, I need for our people to also understand snowball. Snowballing is for people who say, I don't have $100 extra to put on my monthly payment. So take 20 and put that on your smallest debt first. And you can pay that smallest debt off in like 6-7 months, then take that and put it on the next smallest. It takes longer, but you get quicker results. The point is, you are not helpless. Now, if you say, well, Eric, I like what you're saying, but I don't have $100 extra to put on my highest credit card debt. Yes, you do. You know that McDonald's that you go to every day for lunch? $6 a day times 22 working days a month, You spend $122 a month on McDonald's. For the next 6 or 7 months, I need you to carry your lunch in a brown paper bag, because that's how you're going to get your extra $100. You cannot convince me that people at any income strata in life can't get a hold of their debt. Dale likes to use the term delayed gratification, and I love that thought. I just want to tweak it a bit. I don't need to make a sacrifice. I need to shift what gratifies me. Today, I think what gratifies me is a pair of Nike sneakers. Tomorrow, I think what I want to do is say what gratifies me is a share of Nike stock. Because 2 years from now, I don't have those sneakers anymore. I still got the stock. Somebody else said use the same thing for Starbucks. If I skip Starbucks for 10 days and I buy a share of Starbucks stock, at the end of 10 days, that coffee's gone. At the end of 10 days, I still have that stock. What we need to teach each other is to advance our sense of gratification. I can have gratification over a retail item I buy from some company, or I can have gratification over building wealth for me and my family. I don't need to sacrifice. I need to shift the goal.
There you go.
But we can all do that.
Yeah.
You can't tell me what.
You just blew my mind, and I want to tell you why. I sometimes will back off of this conversation that Dale put us in about delayed gratification because of this idea of mindset and not wanting to fight with people who have negative attitudes about people just because they're poor people or whatever the hell you want to say, right? But what you just said, I wish everybody was saying, and you didn't go against what Dale said, it's about shifting it. If I change my mindset right now and I decide what makes me happy is to know within a year I'm going to kill a bill, I'm happy now. I'm happy now because I know a year from now where I'm going to be standing.
That's correct.
That is, you just destroy me with that right now, because I can be happy right now and I can go to sleep at night every night for the next year and watch what's happening in my life. And I don't mean to yell, but I know I feel passionate about this because I had the fortune in my 20s to sit down with a financial counselor and live through some of the stuff that you're talking about. I didn't know what stacking was until I knew what stacking was, and I had to do it. And when I started doing it and I started killing bills, I was like, clip, clip, clip. Well, I'm not going to use that one anymore. Clip, clip, clip. I'm not going to use that one anymore.
That's what I'm
breaking
talking
stuff
about.
out. Oh, my goodness.
Yes, sir. Mike, let me tell you, first time I taught these courses, I had 15, 16, 17-year-old foster care kids. Saturday mornings from 9 to 12, volunteer attendance. I started with 35 kids, and 8 weeks later, I had 35 kids and 9 parents because the parents started coming. We did taxes, budget. We did income taxes, budgeting, insurance. When we finished at the end of those 8 weeks, the kids' question me was, what are we going to learn next week, Mr. Richardson? I said, that's it. There's only 8 times. You can't leave us now. The sense of empowerment was giddy. It was exactly what you just described. They created for themselves a different type of gratification, one that was healthy and would build a financial future for themselves and their family. Every listener on this broadcast can do that. Don't let anybody take that away from you. Empower yourself. Decide.
That's right.
My history is not my future.
You know what else can happen, Mike? And Eric talked about this, and I'll take you on this. Just think about this journey here. You could do what you talked about, which is buy some of the Starbucks stock. So every time you walk past a Starbucks, whether you get a coffee or not, you're smiling because everybody in there is paying you.
That's right.
Everyone in there is paying you.
Yes, sir.
That's got to put a smile on your face.
It's a difference, Dale. It's funny you talk about it. My kids, I listen to. I hope I'm not. I don't know if I'm plugging anybody, but it's on iTunes and it's called Gifted and Lit, and it's these songs, and it says don't just play for the basketball team, own it. And that's the name of the song, Own It.
Now you talk.
And again, as Mike talked about, you buy that piece of stock, you buy 1 or 2 shares, you don't own 1 million shares, you don't own 50,000 shares, sure. But you start getting that piece of mail, that prospectus in the mail, and it begins to let you know, wait a minute, I only own 2 shares or 3 shares or 10 shares or whatever it is, but I'm getting this thing in the mail. That should be hopefully telling me something about my value in terms of the role that I'm playing in this company. And I would say also, we talked a little bit earlier about young people, and I think we were talking maybe with our colleagues in the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. We were having a conversation, and I think the comment was that, how do you approach dealing with debt when it comes to young people, child support debt? And one of the things that was said is that oftentimes, generally speaking, young people are not thinking about their financial future. They're not thinking about dealing with debt early. So when you begin to deal with debt early in your life, you can save you not just money, but grief and time in the future, right? And so, that's again why we're trying to develop this program with young parents. That's why we have in our enforcement unit, we have an early intervention program where we actually have staff who are contacting young parents who are at the beginning of their experience with the child support program to ensure that they're not getting into debt, that if they're in debt, they're trying to align with our debt program. We're directing them to the CUNY Fatherhood Academy, okay, out of the Young Men's Initiative in the mayor's office. We're directing them to other resources to say, okay, let's not just talk about paying your child support debt, but let's also talk about these other things that if we do the early intervention, right, we can begin to make a difference in not just your life, but the life of your children, right? Our 2-generational approach. And so, again, this is just a powerful conversation. This is just great. Again, this mindset shift we're talking about, it can happen on the other side of child support, where you're talking about having the money to be able to buy a home or buy stock. But can also have it happen on the other side of it, where you say, you know what, I'm actually not a victim. I think Eric said this, you're not a victim. You don't have to just sit on the sidelines and say that I'm just going to take what comes to me. I can ask questions. I think Zanib was talking about this in the beginning, asking questions, right? Getting with folks like the folks that you're seeing on this barbershop chat and our city agencies and our community-based organizations, and you can begin to take hold of your financial future in that way.
Alan, I got to highlight something you just said, because I never thought of it in this way before you said it. If I have, excuse me, if I have 1 share of stock in a company, I have 1 share of stock in Starbucks, I have one share of stock in Nike. Every quarter, I get the same prospectus as a billionaire who has 10,000 shares in this. I get the same perspective that a billionaire gets. What does that do for my sense of my participation in the flow of the world? That's extraordinary.
Yeah. Here's the other thing. Just if we keep talking about Starbucks, right? And this is where I think I like to add women in here, because I think women are just our support and our partners in everything we do as men. You find the story of powerful women. And if you look at Starbucks as an institution, as a company, check out who is chairman of the board, Miss Melody Hobson, right? And when some people hear Melody Hobson, like, who is that? Other people are like, wow, that's the lady who's on ABC, Good Morning America, talking about investing. Oh, wow, she's co-CEO of Ariel Capital. What's Ariel Capital? Oh, it's a Black-owned investment company. Why don't I do some of my investing with Ariel Capital? So now what happens is this roller coaster ride that you can go on that allows you to not only get more educated, but also expands your understanding of how the world of money works. And now your power because now you're sitting on the corner reading a annual report of a company, and your friend's like, "What's that?" "Oh man, I own this company." "What you mean you own that company?" "Oh, I own a few shares." "How'd you do that?" "Well, this is what you do." And so that's that power that you have in your community. And I think more and more people, you start to see more and more people reading annual reports. It becomes a thing.
Yeah.
And just as the secondary sneaker market became a thing,
Right.
this can as well. This can as well.
Yeah, and then can I just really react quickly to something Dale just said, real quick, Scott? So Dale was just talking about this prospectus, right? You might get a prospectus, and people say, "Well, what's a prospectus?" Right? It's this breakout of the company and talking about what it's earned and what it's lost, et cetera, and so on. The folks around this table, around the horn here in this conversation, are also trying to make information more digestible, right? Make this information accessible. And so whether you're talking about DYCD and their anti-poverty efforts, whether you're talking about Eric and Dale and their work, whether you're talking about partners at Department of Consumer Worker Protection, we're all trying to say, okay, we have this information, but we're not just trying to give it, we're trying to distill it and break it down where it's actually able to be understood and then utilized, right? The Office of Child Support Services, we also have a variety of YouTube videos. You're on YouTube. We have videos on how to fill out the direct deposit enrollment form, how to request a phone appointment, how to fill out the income and expense statement form, even how to change your address. Because a lot of times, again, taking this ownership, because people are so, have had such a negative experience, oftentimes with Office of Child Support Services, when they move, they don't tell us. And so they don't get their mail. Right? They don't get their mail. They don't realize that when their financial situation changes or their address changes, they're supposed to let us know. But oftentimes they don't let the agency know because, again, of their experiences and feelings around the agency. But there are videos. Even we've tried to take the secrecy and anything out of these kinds of processes by putting these kind of videos on YouTube. And I think that's what everyone around this table is trying to do as well.
I just want to point out one other thing. Eric and Dale and everyone here talked a lot about changing the mindset. Reminded me of something I used to say a lot to people, because when you talk to somebody about budgeting, they lose their breath, their chest gets tight. And I used to tell people that even, budgeting is not akin to dieting. People think about dieting all wrong. They think dieting is eating as little as humanly possible to lose as much weight as you can. Where in reality, if you just fast all the time, you'll die. Same thing with budgeting. The goal isn't to just spend nothing. The goal is to figure out what you spend money on, what you want to spend money on, and how does your money work for you. It's just a change. It's a complete change of mindset. It's the same process. It's the same thing, but people are so scared of budgeting because they think it just means spending nothing, and it's not. It's just figuring out what you spend and then cutting out things that you can't afford or that isn't an intelligent use of your money for the way you want to live both now and in the future.
Max, I think that is a powerful little gem. Like, you don't have to go straight away to austerity and starvation. You can just first look by looking at where you've spent your money. Just looking at where you have already spent your money. And then you can think about your values. And then maybe you will want to make some changes. Maybe there's another brand of coffee instead of the brand of coffee you were doing, or maybe you are going to bring your lunch 2 days a week instead of 5 days a week. It's the little things where you're starting with that awareness of this inventory. I love that analog to diet, and I think we have talked a little bit about diet and exercise here in the barbershop too. I think that's a great analog. You don't have to start off like I got to do 1,000 push-ups or my life is forfeit. You first look at maybe I'll walk that extra block, 2 blocks. Okay.
The thing is,
maybe I'll put down that cookie. Yeah, little steps first. Yeah.
Yeah. Same as eating habits, same as general health. The other problem is that people don't even know what starting point they're at. Biggest thing I used to ask people when budgeting is how much do you spend on food a month? No one has any idea.
I have no idea.
None. No one knows how many. They might know how many times they go to the supermarket, They might have a general idea of how many times they go out to eat to lunch, but they don't know on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis, how much they're spending on food. Once you put that into perspective, then they get it. The second that they put the numbers up in McDonald's for how many calories were in things, boom, people started realizing.
Mike, Max, you're spot on. In the first module that we teach on or that's online for decisions, we do budgeting. And in the module, there's a worksheet that has over 60 items that people can select. The question is, take a look at your debt, your credit card debt, and then look at this list of 60 items and check the ones that are in your credit card debt. And then we have them go through and cross out the things that were wants versus needs that you can really do without. And they're stunned. And we say, well, we're not done. Look again and cross off some more. And they say, you know what? Yeah, I don't really need this yet. I said, now we're talking. Look for a third time and cross off some more. When they take 3 passes through this list of stuff that's in their credit card debt, out of 60 items, how many do you think on average people cross off? Take a guess out of 60. Anybody want to guess?
55. 55.
Yep. 52. Out of 60 things that got them in the debt, when they actually look at it, did I really need that? Can I do without that? They cross off over 50 of them and realize that they're not in debt because they're poor. They're not in debt because they have low income. They're in debt because they spent money on stuff they didn't really need. You have to make a decision. It's out there. You know what? That may have been yesterday. I'm not going to do that today.
I got to jump in, folks. I'm really, and this always happens in our barbershop talks. We get caught up in this, and we're almost at time, and we're just building up to the best gems that we could ever have. But everybody who's listening, there's a part 2. We are going to be talking about part 2 on August 10th. We're going to have part 2, and we're going to start talking about generational wealth. This is the first part about getting the mindset and understanding finances and your money. On August 10th, we're going to start talking about building wealth and generational wealth, which is our next broadcast together. And some of these same panelists are going to be on, and please write to DICD ahead of time to get questions so we can get to these panelists and we can answer some of these questions ahead of time. So we're going to have some final words coming up, and I just want to go through the group right now. And I'm going to start my ladies first. Zee, are you there? You still there with us? Is that about it? Yeah, go ahead. Ladies first. We'll let you have to start our final word. So starting with you.
Thank you. Well, it's, for me personally, it's been very informative. I really want to just hats off to everybody on tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you, Eric, Alan, Dale, everybody really for inviting DCWP. Thank you, Max, for taking the time, and thank you for the folks who have been watching from YouTube. I will say this, odds are folks have probably seen, those giant bus ads and subway ads that says NYC free tax prep, or it says financial impairment NYC free, or it's those big green and white beige adverts that you might see in the subway. Call the number, visit the website nyc.gov/talkmoney. Any information is vital information, and we're here to help. We're here to address concerns, and our base as far as DCWP, it's always transparency. It's always a safe space for folks to come to us and share their grievance, if it's money, any other type of financial issues, or even, a plethora of other reasons. We're here to help, but thank you again. I won't take too much time.
All right, Max, you want to go next?
Actually, Dale, you got to be off in about a minute. Do you want to say some words before you go?
First of all, thank you all. for the invitation. This has been a great group of people talking about things that we really, really need to continue to talk about and be honest with each other about. But it's the people that are listening. It's what you take from this and what you do in changing your habits is what this is really all about. No one gets paid to do this. So the payout and the payoff is to eventually see the wealth gap decrease and the educational understanding of how money operates expands, and your ability to manage your credit gets better. And your understanding that, yes, you may have several credit cards and you may feel that you're overwhelmed with the amount of debt that you've accumulated, but you know that there are resources to assist you in consolidating that debt and managing through that debt and getting to the other side, because we all have the opportunity to get there. We have done it in many other facets of our lives. So if people of color who came to this country as enslaved people can now sit atop several organizations that are Fortune 500 companies and be CEOs or be decision makers across entrepreneurial platforms or in major companies, we can do this as well. So thank you all.
Wow, thanks. All right, Max, you up.
Yeah, appreciate it. I think my closing statement is just something along the lines of, after having talked with all of you for 2 hours, not having met any of you except for Zaneeb prior to this, I'd sit down and talk to you all about my finances all day, every day. You guys want to know what my credit score is, my debt, my savings, all of you guys are trustworthy. I'd enjoy it. I think what I would say to anyone out there is, after listening to us talk for all this time, if you feel comfortable talking to us, feel comfortable talking to others. And if you want to talk to somebody just as knowledgeable, just as professional, just as calm and collected, anyone who lives or works in New York City is lucky enough to have that resource available for free. I was a financial counselor. These were the conversations I was having every day. If this is something you want to have with somebody that you can trust, reach out to us. And if you don't quite feel comfortable reaching out to us, or if you don't necessarily get the opportunity, my recommendation is find somebody in your life you do feel comfortable with and start small. You don't have to dive into what your credit score is. You don't have to dive into the child support debt you owe. Talk a little bit about your spending habits. Start from there, work your way up, get more comfortable with it, and over time it'll come.
Max, can you get that number and that website again, please?
Absolutely. The website is nyc.gov. That is nyc.gov/talkmoney. And if you can't remember that or don't want to remember that, call 311. If you call 311 and ask for financial counseling, financial counselor, financial empowerment, they will link you up with our call center, who will be able to answer all your questions and make you an appointment. So nyc.gov/talkmoney or 311. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Okay, Alan, you're up.
Well, again, Mike, Scott, Jerry, just thank you. Thank DYCD for this opportunity. This was just a great conversation, such a rich conversation. I learned so much. And I guess the final thing I would just like to say and encourage all of our listeners tonight is to rethink your approach to money, rethink your approach to debt. I hope that this conversation was part of your process in doing that, to rethink city government. Again, that city government agencies have come a long way since many people have engaged with them more closely. And particularly speaking about the Office of Child Support Services, over the last decade plus, we've really tried to go in another direction in terms of how we see, understand parents, mothers and fathers, and children, the family unit, and being more thoughtful about that. So reach out to us. And again, I think I take Max's approach as well. If you're saying, well, I don't know if I want to be so quick to run down to 151 West Broadway, or I don't know if I'm so quick to email you for a virtual consultation, connect with one of the fatherhood programs, connect with one of the parenting programs in the city, connect with a financial counselor who would be able to sort of be that go-between and help facilitate the relationship between, say, yourself and the Office of Child Support Services, so you can begin to access those resources to get you on a new path for yourself and your children.
Alan, can you give us the phone number and website again?
You can go to www.nyc.gov/HRA/child support services. And I believe that we put our email where you can email us in the YouTube chat. So you can email us there and request a virtual phone appointment. That email, actually, I'll tell you, it's dcse.cscweb@dfa.state.ny.us. That's dcse.cscweb@dfa.state.ny.us. If you email us there, you can request an appointment, a virtual appointment to talk about your child support concerns.
Alan, real quickly before you go, can you talk quickly about the child support calculator?
Say that one more time, Scott.
The child support calculator.
The child support calculator. So the child support calculator is a resource that's on our website. A lot of times I think people believe that child support is sort of arrived at in a sort of a capricious kind of way, just sort of pulling a number out of a hat. But what we want to let folks know, when you look at this child support calculator, it actually, there's an actual formula that goes into deciding how much child support someone pays, whether it's one child or two children. And so if you actually go onto our website and go to the custodial parents link, you can actually see something called Child Support Calculator, where you can actually enter the number of children for whom your support is being requested, enter the non-custodial, non-residential parents' gross annual income, and it will generate that for you. And there's a whole explanation about the Child Support Standards Act and how that was developed to ensure that child support awards in New York State were fair and consistent.
Great. Wow, this is so helpful. Dr. Richardson, we have to stuck on doctor, and we need a part 3 with just you. All the gems that you put in there. You know, made a Fort Knox here tonight. So I'm gonna wrap it up with you.
Thank you for that. Listen, the thing I'd like to leave all our listeners with is just some basic truths. Truth number 1, you are not a victim. Truth number 2, wealth is not what you earn, it's what you keep. You can be financially stable, healthy, and build wealth no matter what income level you're at, but you have to decide. There's only 2 things you need. Decide that you're going to learn how money works. You can go to my website, which is decisionsnow.com. And on there, you will learn about handling credit, budgeting, home ownership, savings and investment, services of a bank, buying insurance, income taxes, and even Social Security and Medicare. A little bit of knowledge changes everything. I think one of the highlights from this session that I embraced is the notion you don't have to sacrifice your gratification, shift your gratification to something that's permanent. Decide that your history has nothing to do with your future, has nothing to do with your income. You can build financial strength for yourself and your family, no matter what income level you have. Get some education and take advantage of all of the services that you just heard about, the people that you just met. Each of them are here to help you. You don't have to do this alone. But the one thing I need you to do is decide that your future is going to be different than your past. You are not a victim.
Wow, wow, Mike and Jerry, are we ready to we're really ready to go, ready to rock and roll. We got a beautiful.
I'll let Jerry go. Jerry go, and then I'll go.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. So, I mean, I got so much out of this. I can't thank all the panelists so much. Just, it was so rich. And if I said anything to anyone out there, If you have more sneakers than you have stocks, if you don't have an emergency fund, if you don't have 6 months of expenses saved up, if you're simply afraid to look at your bank account, you need to rewind this and look at it again. Get ready for part 2, because there was just so many gems. And it's spending freely is so convenient until the lack of money becomes uncomfortable. And like I said before, most people don't even realize they're broke until they're broken. And so to have a space where we can really talk about it, and really uplift, guide, and then grant you the resources, please make sure you check this out. As a mental health person, counselor, I know there's 6 areas of health: mental, emotional, spiritual, social, physical, and financial. And so same way I would say every thought should have an assignment. You should know where every thought and emotion is assigned. Every dollar should have an assignment. So I challenge everyone to inspire the culture by being the change that you want to empower it by.
Harry, I should have gone and let you go last. Wow. I keep it. I guess he just, like, um, for the last several months, every time someone would say something, I'm like, whoo, they like jumped off the top rope and wham, knocked them out. So many gems have been dropped that I can't even pick, you know? But a few things that stood out for me earlier in the discussion, when Sekou said we're used to saying let's keep it 100, and now we need to reframe our conversations with our friends and our peers about keeping it 700 plus. That alone is one takeaway. Whoever you are really cool with, even if you don't, share all your bank statements or whatever, if you could just start inserting into your regular dialogue a few things. What do we say in the barbershop? Steel sharpens steel. Father initiative, steel sharpens steel. If we can just begin to change some of those conversations and bring some new things into our conversation. I can imagine people sitting in the barbershop reading the prospectus as easily as they can be reading the sports page of the newspaper. You know what I mean? What you doing? Getting my life together. I want to talk about it. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Right? It's not what you make. It's what you can keep and grow. That is another gem. You know. But I think another thing to walk away from is what Eric said earlier and what he doubled down and came back to now. Shift what gratifies you. If you start working now on a plan for whatever it is for the next 6 months or a year, where every night this one little thing you're doing right now is going to lead to peace of mind, forward growth, freedom in your life a year from now, you don't really have to delay that gratification. It's paying in now, and that satisfaction is not going to evaporate. Scott, you're right. When we said that we were going to touch on this topic, we knew right away we could not do it in one session. So I want to thank all the panelists and all of the great questions that arose, knowing that we were going to try to scaffold and build upon this when we go into the second session. And some of our panelists will return, and we're going to have some other panelists too in August. I really look forward to it. I hope everyone is staying safe over the summer, and we look forward to your continued attention and followership of the Barbershop.
So as I'm wrapping up tonight's talk, I want to give a couple of things I want everybody to make sure you take. One, develop a vision board. Pick your vision of what you want to go to, what you want to build to. Where do you want to go? That's what you need to start first. Get a vision of where you want to go and what you want to do. Then also, please understand, fast money is not good money. To say you have to have the longevity in the money. You have to learn how to grow the money, keep the money. In our communities that we work with, especially in poverty communities, the dollar bill doesn't stay in the community more than about 5 or 10 minutes before it's out the community. We have to learn how to keep the money home. How do you keep it in your pocket? Also, invest. Find a way of investing and don't get caught up into the credit card game or to quit the credits. So you get stuck behind the 8 ball early in life. Always find a way to move forward. As we said in our next part of our barbershop, starting on August 10th, please tune in. We're going to start talking about really how do you build generational wealth. I heard some people tonight talk about buying a house. If you can rent, you can own. And a lot of times we did not understand that early in life. I always think back, I was telling Mike when we started this conversation, when I had just finished playing ball and I had an opportunity to buy a 2-bedroom co-op for $30,000 And I was at that time, I was probably making like $80,000, $90,000, and I thought I couldn't afford it, and I didn't do it. That same condo is probably about $1 million now. But if I would have understood money, which we talked about today, I could have had that plus the house, plus many other things with the money that I was making. Because I was making good money, I just didn't understand how money worked.
Right.
So everybody, and I appreciate all of our guests. Thank you again for our guests who are on today. We'll be back on the 10th again. Please, if you have questions, you have comments, you can like and share this conversation with DYCD. Send us an email to our website, or you can send it to me at scott@sleach@dycd.gov. And we will hopefully get the questions on that we can help answer some of these questions for our next panel that we're going to have talking about building wealth. Well, so until next time, fast money is not always good money. And be patient. Get the money down the line in the future. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Good night.